Hey there. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. I am Jane Pettit, the pastor of First Presbyterian Church in Kingsville, Texas. And as promised, good folks of First Pres in Kingsville, I am recording the sermon so that folks can listen to it on Sunday morning and have some sense of connection, that we can all have a connection together with worship, since at present time we are not meeting as a church family in person. And churches all over the nation and world are doing this, and it seems so counterintuitive, but it's actually an opportunity to do the right thing, to love our neighbor in a way that feels awkward and sacrificial and even strange. So we're going to do it for the time being. And as awkward as this feels for me to talk to you all by myself in the kitchen when you know that I love to be with you, we're going to do this for the time being. And there's one little gift in it. There's a gift because it's an opportunity, as I have been reminding you for a couple of years, that the building's not the church, the sanctuary's not the church. You are the church. We are the church, no matter where we are. And so this time gives us an opportunity to really meditate on that and see how that manifests itself in our daily life. I'm going to read Psalm 23 to you. It's such a familiar one. I think it's a really good one for us to hear this time. I am often asked to read this scripture, to read this passage at funerals, and because it's a passage of comfort, it's a passage of hope, and I think we could use a little dose of both right now, don't you? Hear the word of the Lord, and Lord, open up our hearts. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long. This is the word of the Lord. It is such a comforting passage. You can almost just feel like you're a sheep nuzzling up to the shepherd. I had always thought of this passage, always pictured it and imagined it in my mind in some lush green meadow setting of sorts. I'm not sure why, but that's always what I had pictured. And then we went to Israel last summer, and we were told to get up really early, and we went out to the Judean desert to watch the sunrise. And our guide had asked us to be quiet, to go in silence. And then we got there in the early dawn before the sun comes over the hills. And it was kind of hazy that morning. And so it's a little foggy looking. And as we were standing out there and we were all sort of spread out, I guess we were social distancing before we knew we had to, but we were all spread out, just lost in our own thoughts. And looking out over the Judean, I don't know if they're mountains or hills, very arid, and they look very sandy, and it looks very much like a different kind of wilderness than I had ever pictured. But I started looking out and realizing that this psalm would have very well been written in that environment. That this wasn't a lush little stream that the psalmist was talking about. This wasn't a place where grass would be readily available. No, these were very stark circumstances that the psalmist was in. And we attribute this to David, that David would have been in at that time. It would have been very harsh and probably very isolating and frightening. And so ever since then, I've looked at this passage different. I've looked at it as really when you're in a time of complete isolation or loneliness or barrenness, that this psalm would just make your heart sing, like when he says that he makes me lie down in green pastures. Well, one of the things that the shepherd does is if the sheep, they just continue to take stuff in, he would take them where they could find grass. So they'd take it in, eat all they could, but you can't digest it while you're eating. And so the shepherd would bring the sheep over and have them lie down in the pastures so that they could chew their cud, so that they could metabolize what they had eaten. And I feel like right now there's just so much going on in the world, especially right now. There's just so much that we're having to take in at one time that it's impossible to process or digest it all. And so I see that even though these measures that we've had to take are harsh and they feel unreasonable and they're very isolating in so many ways, maybe the gift in this is the time that we take to process and let God meet us in those questions. Because there's not another human, it seems like, that knows all the answers. This is an unprecedented time. I hate that word now, but it is an unprecedented time that we're in. Nobody knows exactly how this is going to end or what kind of shape the country will be in when we finally get through this, or when we'll get through this. We know that we'll get through it somehow, but we don't have any idea what that's going to be like. And so we take in all of this news feed and all of these stories and all of these opinions and all of these rumors and all of these conversations. And my suggestion is that we use this time of social distancing and as they say, hunkering down and isolation, that we use this time to let God minister to us. Our little mortal bodies weren't meant to be in adrenaline mode 24/7. And so it's good. It's good. It's okay if you're not producing all the time during this isolation time. Let God meet you in that place. He says that he leads me beside the still waters. I love this. I read where some of the streams that the shepherd would lead the sheep to, well, they're rushing. Sometimes there would be rushing streams. And so a sheep was in danger if they got too close to the water. And if they tried to get too close to the water and they would drink it, well, they might fall into the water. So the good shepherd would go and he would make these make a little rock lake, maybe for a better word, and that it would still the waters in that place so that the sheep could drink out of it and be refreshed and nourished. Again, I think there's an opportunity for us. There's an opportunity for us to stop and to pause and to be refreshed by the things that maybe we haven't noticed for a while. Be refreshed by the simple things like a children's giggle. I know a lot of moms are having to do homeschool right now, and although it's probably driving them crazy, I bet you're all noticing things in your children that maybe you've been too busy to see lately when we've been going in our regular schedules. Maybe those conversations with people that maybe you're making phone calls or having Zoom meetings or something, that you're having this opportunity to actually slow down and try to be in the moment. I think that will refresh not only our bodies, but also our souls, and it will strengthen our spirit. I think we can trust God to meet us in these places, in this moments, and to refresh us if we'll allow it. Even though, he leads me in right paths for his name's sake. If we are too tired and too busy and too worried and too consumed with all that's going on, it's hard for us to discern what the right path for us will be. And so if we take this opportunity again while we're in isolation and we pause and we kind of clear our heads of all the garbage and we take note and be grateful for the blessings and wonderful moments and wonderful people in our lives around us, then we'll be strengthened and we'll be able to better discern what the next moves are for our families. a lot of us, we don't know yet. There's going to be a lot of layoffs. There already have been, and there's going to be a lot of people whose retirements are not performing at all like we counted them to be. And there'll be some decisions that we'll have to make, some choices that we'll have to make moving forward. But if we come to those choices refreshed and restored, we'll be better able to make level decisions that aren't based on fear, but are based in faith. So that is a reminder that we always have God's guidance if we'll open ourselves up to it. And a lot of times that guidance comes from the still voice within, but you can't hear it if you're too tired and you're too stressed out. So I encourage you to let yourself be refreshed so that you'll be ready to make the decisions that you'll need to make moving forward. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Now, the paths along these hills that we were looking at, out in the Judean desert, they're very steep. The paths would be narrow, and it would be easy for a sheep to slip off if they got off the track at all. And so it was comforting to know that no matter what danger, if they slipped on a rock or something, that the shepherds, that crook, the staff that they carry, they could pull the sheep back into it. Inevitably, during this time of stress, especially with our families and friends and maybe co-workers, if you're having to work at home and figure out how to communicate with each other, as we get tired of this and our stress builds up, the worst of us may come out. We may lash out at the people that we love the most. The important thing is to remember, if we can come back to center, if we can remember what's important, that that's where grace comes in. And we want to be able to offer that grace to each other and to ourselves. We don't know how to do this path. We haven't done it before. And so we're finding our way. And the main thing that we can do is just keep our focus. Keep our focus on the strength that God provides us with, and also the grace, and then be able to pass that on to one another. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. There are so many people who already, before this happened, are in need, and they suffer from income inequality. There's so many children that suffer for hunger. So I want to be careful that I don't make light of any of this. And in this time, we may see a lot more of that, and we may experience some sense of deprivation ourselves. But I want to encourage us that God has given us this beautiful creation. God has created each one of us uniquely, and yet all in the image of God. And if we believe that God is love, then we know that we're all made in that image of love. And God has called us to unity, not uniformity, and to community, not conformity. And so we've been given the tools, the grace, the compassion. If we've been created in the image of God, we've been given the tools that we need to reflect that image in the world, to care for one another. And maybe a silver lining in this will be that we'll wake up to that. You see, this virus is no respecter of persons. This virus doesn't care what country you come from, what gender you are, what your sexual preference is, what your economic position is, what your political party is. This is a virus that can attack and will attack any human. And just at the opposite end of it, God's love is like that too. Everyone is created in God's image. And so God's love is for everyone. We as people in the Christian faith believe that happened in the particular of Jesus Christ, but the particular always happens for the universal. The message was always meant to remind us to restore us back to that message of God's love for what God created. So I feel like that the preparation that we can count on is that we've been created in God's image. And we have a built-in resiliency and built-in compassion. But so often we carry about these armors of illusion that we're in control and that we're different, and then we don't agree with each other. We find ways to separate. But this is a moment where we realize that we depend on each other. We as humans and all humanity are interdependent from one another. And so if we prepare the table for all, we can prepare the table for one. There can't be one that's left out. There's the opportunity. Surely, you anoint my head with oil and our cup overflows. We always have something to be grateful about. There's always something to be grateful about. And I think that gratitude will be, it will be the thing that will get us through. If we can remain grateful, then we can remain hopeful. And when we're hopeful, we operate from a place of strength. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long. God is sovereign. Nothing has changed about that. We live and breathe and move and have our being in God, within God's realm. And God calls us to love God, who is love, to live into that love, and to love one another, to show one another. So I don't know what the next week is going to hold for us, but I do know who holds us in the next week. And so my prayer for you is that you will remember today that you have been wonderfully and fearfully made by the Creator God in the image of love, and that you have been redeemed, lovingly redeemed in Jesus the Christ, and that you'll go about your week empowered by the Holy Spirit to live and to love and to give grace and to hope in the name of Christ. This week, if you feel at times like you can't catch your breath, you get anxious, I want you to do something. You might try it. You could close your ears up and just take a few deep breaths, just in and out, listening only to the rhythm of your breath. And remember that every single time you hear that breath, you're hearing God's yes, I love you. Every single time. God bless you. I love you too.